Hey, I'm Des.
Hey y'all, I'm Sai.
And we're the co-hosts of Let's Talk Sis podcast, where we truly believe that together empowered women can transform their lives.
Join us for heartfelt stories, enlightening conversations, and a whole lot of accountability along the way. Hey y'all.
Hey.
We're back with another episode.
Yes, we are.
We gotta find a new intro because I'm tired of every episode.
Feel like a tape recorder.
Yeah. I was just listening to a few of our previous episodes from a year ago, and I was like, it's so crazy how we made this like our thing. Yeah.
It's crazy though, because when we first started, we used to be like, what is that? Even when I used to say toodles, I still do actually, because I say the same thing at the end. It's like, what is that? Where did that come from?
Yeah, like we really made it our thing.
Maybe we should keep it then.
I don't know. New year, new slogan.
Let's start there.
I'm really good. I was ready to get into the topic. I'm really excited for this one. But okay. I'm feeling good. I'm a little tired, but how are you?
I'm doing good. I feel good. I feel like last night was probably the first night in a few months that I went to sleep at a kind of reasonable time. So I feel pretty good.
That's good. Yeah. I love that for you.
So, like you said, new year, I'm trying to become better, make better habits.
I love that for you.
So what are we talking about? What is the topic?
Today we're talking about suffering, and I really am excited to dive into this conversation and get your perspective on suffering, and really just have our audience be a part of this episode, because I feel like I stumbled across like this YouTube short, and it was this lady, I don't remember her name, but she was basically explaining lamenting. And that took me down a whole rabbit hole of what suffering is, how to lament, and things like that. And I just feel like if more people had a better idea of, I guess, what suffering is and what it entails entirely from like a biblical standpoint, then it will make it so much more worthwhile. And I know that sounds crazy.
Okay, I'm listening.
I know that sounds crazy, but I feel like if we understood the process and the why and the byproduct of it, then we would be more prepared to endure.
So just for like my understanding, suffering is kind of like a byproduct of our human free will, right?
No.
So wait, because I actually did research, so inform me, please.
So wait, a part of your research told you that
lamenting is, because I remember we was talking kind of briefly. It was like, why does God allow us to suffer? That's a question that I ran into. That like, I guess people ask, like, why does God allow us to suffer? And the answer that what I found was, it's kind of like a byproduct of our free will. So even, for example, like how when Jesus was on the cross and asked, like, my God, why have you forsaken me? He was suffering as a human.
And do you think that the byproduct of him suffering in that moment was the fact that God left him?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't think it was the fact that God left him, but I feel like that's what I mean by free will. He was allowed to, like, that was his that's how he felt. I don't think God left him. I don't think God ever left him.
But I don't think that was a part of Christ's free will, because even when we look at him prophesying his own death, I'm sure if it was his free will, he would have never died and went through the torture and the
But that was for,
physical.
That's what I mean. That was for our sins, though.
But that's not his free will.
Like I said, further educate me.
No, but I'm educating myself in the process.
I was doing more research on the biblical standpoint of suffering. And I read some of, like, Romans was, like, speaking on it a little bit. And Matthew as well was when I seen that part. But I don't know. So if it's not the byproduct of our free will, what do you feel?
I think that when we look at suffering, instead of looking at suffering from a perspective of it being a punishment or a consequence, I think that we should look at it as a mandate. Like, suffering is a part of our life. No, like there's no, oh, if I walk this straight, narrow walk, because we can't walk a straight, narrow walk.
I don't think it's a punishment.
That we are going to live this life that excludes punishment or excludes suffering of some sort, right? And then I was just going down this rabbit hole and I started reading a word. Well, the first thing that came into my head, because we talked about this on one of our previous episodes, was Mary and Martha.
Okay.
And
I just read about that because
yes, and that was in Matthew.
Yeah.
And it was so interesting to me that these people who are holy, right? Because they're in the Bible. But it was so interesting to me that they expressed a humanistic experience or frustration to Jesus Christ himself.
Yeah.
And it really just shifted my perspective to, okay, when I'm suffering or when I am going through the motions and I feel frustrated, I feel overwhelmed, why do we feel like we have to deal with our emotions by ourselves before we take it to God, prior to just feeling how we feel and taking it to God in the midst and in the moment?
So that was another point that I came to, that suffering allows us to have more of an intimate relationship with God and strengthen our faith.
It does.
Because within suffering, like you said, we shouldn't feel like, but even feeling like we have to deal it with ourselves, that's kind of like when we was talking about kind of idolizing yourself.
It is.
And feeling like, in a sense, you don't need God, or as if
I think it's self-righteousness for sure.
Yeah, as if he can't fix whatever it is that you're going through.
Yeah.
I feel like that allows us to build that connection and that vulnerability with God. But you got to feel like you got to be able to be vulnerable.
Yeah, and I think just to take that a little bit deeper, I think that as believers, we really want to share the same sentiments as Christians or as Christ when it comes to favor and grace and mercy and all of those fruits of the Spirit. But when it comes to the things that don't feel good, the things that come to pressure us, the things that come to engulf the flame that's lit within us, I think that when those things arise, it's really difficult for us to stay connected to the one who causes the problem. Because I feel like in a lot of times when situations arise, it'll be like, oh, the enemy is this, the enemy is that. But sometimes I really feel like we give the enemy too much credit.
I do feel like we give the enemy too much credit. And it's something else that I heard like a while ago, and you could tell me if you like counter this or not. Someone also said like how everybody say like, oh, the devil working today or the devil doing this. The devil is not omnipresent. He can't be like doing every single thing, every single place to every single person at one time.
Well, I think when people use that saying, it's from a figurative perspective, right? So when people say the enemy is working, it's not because he's omnipresent from that perspective. I think it's because like he will torment your mind.
Right.
He will plant a seed here. He will allow this to happen. So it's a byproduct of, exactly, it's a byproduct of something, not the fact that he's like messing with it's 8 billion of us, I think, or something like that projected in the world. So
and I do want to counter something else you said. You said we give the enemy too much credit and sometimes not who caused it or something like that you said. Do you feel like God causes these bad things, or do you feel like he allows them?
I feel like he definitely permits it, for sure. Because even when we look at Job, right? I'm on a break from social media, right? But before I went away, I went through my captions, because my captions, if you've been to my Instagram, is basically where the meat of like my I don't know, the purpose of my following or everything is, right? It's always a story being told in my caption. I went to my birthday last year, actually, my caption, and I swear, when I read Job this time around in April for my birthday last year, it was completely different. You know, because a lot of times if you're not too familiar with the Bible for yourself, you go to church and you hear about Job because we got this whole prosperity teaching that's going on, but you hear about Job and you like, oh, that's the man that got blessed tenfold. That's the man that lost everything and got it back, right? But you never hear about his lamenting. And his lamenting was the fact that I think it was like a good 10 plus chapters, he was so frustrated. And I remember he was livid, okay? He couldn't understand. He was confused, I'm sure. He felt neglected. He was abandoned. He was so many different things. And it's like, nobody talks about what that phase is, what Job was experiencing in that moment. in comparison to the fact that, in the beginning, God allowed Satan to test him, and at the end, he was rewarded tenfold. But nobody talks about that humanistic experience that happens in the middle.
And that's the part that matters most, because, like you said, the humanistic experience, that's the part that people can actually relate to, that people can see themselves in, opposed to just the glorified part being highlighted or just the good parts being highlighted. When it's like, I think we talked about this on Bible study as well. Because that's what I feel like everybody, but mostly like I always heard about the
Job got blessed.
Job got blessed tenfold because he stayed faithful. That's all you heard. And then when you actually read the text, it's like,
how faithful was he? I mean, he
wavered.
He was faithful because he took the difference between Job and the average Joe was Job took his frustrations, his confusion, his agony, his pain, everything to God. He was speaking to God. Whereas though the average Joe would be on Twitter tweeting away, on the phone venting away to somebody who's probably going to tell your business, or somebody who really doesn't have the airspace. The average Joe wouldn't know how to suffer.
Yeah.
And I think that diving into this topic, I'm hoping that a lot of our viewers will be able to shift their perspective on what it means to suffer and how to lament, right? Were you about to say something?
I was about to add to that, because a huge part of life in all is like, we can't figure it out. Like, a lot of things, most things are not made for us to solve. They're not made for us to handle. They're not made for us to make right. Like, most of the things, many things only God can fix. Like, there's a lot of problems and stuff that we be running, and I'm saying we as in me, for a lot of times, I always try to just use this resource, call this person, figure this out. And it's like, no, you need to just sit down, read your Bible, talk to God, and let him figure it out. Just, it's out of my hands type of thing.
Yeah.
And that's something major, like, I feel like I've been practicing lately, when I keep saying every little thing, because this age 25 has been trial years for me. And every little thing that occurs, I don't stress, I don't be sad, it's just like, don't stress about it if you can't control it, and bring it to God and just leave it at that.
Yeah.
And have faith that you could just leave it at that.
So I guess my question to you would be, what is, just taking it back to the beginning, but what is your idea of suffering?
Being vulnerable, being honest, being faithful, crying out and depending on just that, and the relationship between God and me, or whatever, strictly on there. Like, suffering is actually allowing yourself to go through it and feel it, but bringing it to God in the midst of it. I feel like that's something I've newly understood, or came into the understanding of within not that long ago, because so long, for me, I want to say kind of suffering didn't really exist, because I brush everything under the rug. I try to, I guess, cover up and compress everything, but I realized, like, you have to suffer to get past. You have to go through things, literally and physically go through them to get through them.
Yeah.
Which involves sometimes suffering, depending on what the situation is. You got to feel it to get past it, or to overcome it.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like suffering is. What would suffering be to you?
I feel like all the adjectives you used to explain suffering was like very, I don't know, polished. I think when I think of suffering and what it means, I really see someone who is like broken, someone who is being crushed. Like, there's this level of endurance or breaking that has to happen. In some cases, I see a visual expression of like something being birthed. I feel like something is always birthed out of a season of suffering. And I think lamenting is taking that suffering and bringing it to God. But I don't think that suffering in its original form is including God in the context of that. Because people can definitely suffer without Christ. And sometimes I be thinking, like, if walking with Christ is this difficult, I cannot imagine the reality of those who are choosing to just walk alone. Because it is rough.
I think walking with Christ is rough, trying to align it and, you know, I don't want to say like perfect because nothing is perfect. No one is perfect, but like trying to keep that straight line of walking with Christ is rough. Trying to anyway. But I think that having the faith or having faith makes it not as hard. It makes it a teeny tiny bit easier. Having that faith.
Okay, I want to challenge your perspective a bit. I don't know what you're talking about, but every person I've come across and had this similar conversation with, they have said that it is very difficult to walk with Christ. But I want to challenge your perspective. Do you think that it is the faith that makes it easier, or do you think that because you suffered at level 1 and now you're suffering at level 2, it gets easier because your endurance increased?
Personal perspective, I think it's the faith because suffering at level 1, when I suffer it, I don't feel like that gets easier.
I'm only asking because I don't think faith changes too much of anything throughout the process. Like when we look at Job I'm gonna use Mary and Martha for example, right? So I remember when Jesus was traveling, right, and they basically sent for him and was like, the one who you love has died, right? And when Jesus came into the town, this first sister, Martha, I think her response was, if you were here, my brother wouldn't have died, right? Which shows a certain level of, she was relying on him, but also she feels like if you were here, then this wouldn't have happened. Like, it's kind of your shifting blame. Like, it's your fault a little bit because you're the one that could heal.
So for me, faith makes, you said you don't think faith, what did you start your sentence off? You don't think faith
makes a difference in suffering.
For me, faith makes a difference in suffering because my faith is what keep me assured that this is for a reason, or this is for a season, or God got something better for me. And it may be, no, it's not delusion. That's my faith. I feel like that's my faith. That it's a lot of situations where it's like, God wouldn't allow, like my father wouldn't allow this that deep or that far. Like, I don't know. My faith is what makes it easier for me. Okay. Because in the back of my mind, every little thing that goes wrong or any major suffering that I feel like I've encountered or endured, it was my faith that roped me back together in the end.
Okay. That's fair.
So
I don't know, because I feel like we always dissect each other's thoughts, but part of me feels like you're so fixated on coming out of the situation, maybe that like the future and being out of it and things turning around, that you're not like actually in the process and enduring the like reality of what's happening. And I think that goes back to the initial point that you made, that suffering just became a thing to you.
That's what I was about to say. It's a process for me. So the first part of it was not like suffering or not going through it or acknowledging it at all. Yeah. So now that I acknowledge it, it's like, all right, let's wrap this up. What's next? So that's probably why. It's probably a process. I mean, I'm sure it's a process. So maybe my next part of the process will be soaking more into it or further enduring it, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like it's definitely a process because I just got to the grounds of even acknowledging or enduring it, and I'm still in that process now because it's still things now that I question in so many different aspects, but even as far as like healing. And it's a lot of things that I felt like, oh, I've healed from that. I don't think about that. I don't worry about that. And in reality, it's like I didn't. So it's like, okay, if I didn't fully heal from that, that means I didn't allow myself to deeply settle in it or absorb it or I guess suffer within that moment.
Yeah.
It's a process.
So if you had to like pull on, I guess, a personal experience, what type of emotions do you feel like you typically experience in a moment of suffering?
Hold on. Did the camera hear that? Siri was talking?
No, I think it probably like heard Siri when you said it, but it didn't pick it up.
Okay, I'm sorry. Could you repeat your question?
I don't remember what the question was.
You asked, when was a moment that I feel like I've endured suffering? or a moment that I can remember and during suffering.
No, I didn't ask you that. Actually, I asked you. What typically what are some of your personal emotions that are surrounded around suffering? Like when you think of you going through your own personal experiences and just navigating, I guess, what that is like.
Different emotions that I feel only because, again, like I explained my process to you. One of the main emotions I be feeling is confusion. I feel a lot of confusion in the moments of my suffering. And this might sound crazy, but I'm just inviting you all into the way my mind thinks. I'm normally confused because depending on the situation, my main question is like, unfortunately, a lot of the times my main question is like, why does this bother me? Or why does this make me feel this way? Or why does this affect me? Or why do I care? Or something like that. So it's confusion, I guess, within self. And then another emotion, depending on, again, the situation, it could be anger or it can be just sadness. It depends on the situation. But my main emotion during times of suffering is confusion.
Yeah.
Because when I'm in situations or when I'm going through anything or feeling anything, any like trials and stuff, I'm confused. 9 out of 10 times I'm confused as to like what is even going on right now. I don't know. Mainly confusion though, for sure. How about you?
I really don't know. I don't even think I've taken the time to sit and ask myself that question. I know right off of that, piggybacking off of what you said, I think that anger could easily be an emotion. But honestly, I feel like whenever I'm enduring something, I'm at the point in my life, or I'm at the point in my walk, I should say, where emotions are very fleeting for me, right? Okay. Which could be a really good or bad thing. But when it's pertaining to suffering, it's like, I don't know how to explain it, but I really just feel like I'm built for tough. Like, it sounds crazy to say.
So you don't suffer?
I definitely suffer, but I think I've came to this place in this walk where I know how to suffer. So when I am going through it, it's very easy for me to stay 10 toes down. Like, I feel like if not any other year, no, I can't say that, because my first year living in Houston was very rough. But like this past year, I feel like I've endured well. And I keep hearing that from like the people closest to me who are on a similar journey with me. But it's like the amount of things that I went through this year, I feel like could have really broken me. Or if it was someone else who had to walk in my shoes that didn't have the same amount of practice, I want to say, with suffering. I think when you're used to suffering in a sense, because we've all had a hard life. We've all had our hearts are different. We always talk about like how everybody's struggle is different, but I feel like the life that I've had in my adolescent years have really taught me how to suffer. So now that I'm like grown and I'm a woman and I'm being faced with real life things, it almost feels like I've had so much practice with suffering.
So my question to that is you said you feel like you stay 10 toes down because basically you recognize it. It's something that you feel like you've endured before. And
no, not before, because each experience is completely different. Yeah. But I feel like I figured out a cheat code in the sense of how to endure suffering. And with that being said, it's like I know how to identify what is happening. I know how to position myself spiritually so that I'm not able to crumble or my back doesn't feel like it's against the wall. Even in my moments of lamenting, I don't think it's ever for too long, or if rarely ever, honestly, at this point. It's kind of like, God, I already know, like...
So do you not feel emotion?
I feel emotion.
That's what I'm saying. So what are the emotions that you feel?
But I'm saying my emotions are so fleeting that they're never like even if I feel like I started this whole thing off by saying anger would definitely be one, but my emotions are so fleeting when I'm able to identify like, oh, this is a part of the process. I'm not even about to be fixated on anger or confusion or anything like that when I know how to fight.
So that's kind of similar to what I was saying with doing what needs to be done next, what needs to be done to
but not a
overcome
next
this
thing.
or get through this or resolve
I don't
this
think
issue.
that our experiences or what I took up, what I got from your point of view was the same as mine, because you seemed as if you were so fixated on coming out of something, which is that like
I'm fixated on resolving it or getting
yeah, and I'm fixated on whatever lesson this is, pull it out. Like, okay, this is a part of the process. Like, I'm
resolving
here.
it.
No, I'm in the midst of it. Like, I'm not backing down. I'm not crumbling. I'm not crying. I'm not weeping about it, depending on what the situation is, because I'm trying to assess the situation for what it is and really bask in what the situation is so I can take the lesson from it. So I don't have to go through the same, suffer for the same thing twice.
Maybe we just not understanding, but I feel like it's the same. It's figuring out what needs to be done to get through or get past it. It's the same thing.
Okay.
I think you're just using different wording.
Okay.
But yeah, it's the same thing. Because it's very similar, because you said you feel like from what I said, I don't sit and bask in it. That's very similar to what you said. Like, it's no crying, it's no weeping. It's very similar.
I never said that I don't
as a similarity.
I never said that I don't sit and bask in it. I said I do.
No, you said that about. No, I'm saying that's what your response was when I said what I said about me. But I think what most popped out as like a similarity to me was the point of like fleeting emotions. Because nothing feels the same for too long. I think the reasons why we have fleeting emotions may be different with just how we navigate through our situations, but that's a huge similarity.
Yeah. Ultimately, I just wish that topics like, I don't know, topics that highlighted more of a humanistic experience that mirror our real life walk and our real life frustrations. I just wish that topics like these were made more accessible. And I don't know, just a part of mainstream media, because I feel like so many people wouldn't feel so taken aback when they were hit with something that's unexpected.
And feel like they're the only ones going through it.
Yeah.
When you say made more accessible, what do you mean by that?
Because I feel like everybody is learning a lot through social media. So whether it be like a reel or a short, because honestly, that's all everyone's attention span has to really grasp any type of information. But whenever someone is coming across information, I just wish that type of, context was made more accessible, rather than just talking about favor and grace and mercy and all of those other great, amazing things. But it's kind of just like redundant and it's unrealistic, because that is not what vast of our human experience as a believer is suffering.
Do you think, you said you wish topics like this could be made more accessible. Do you think they aren't accessible, or people just aren't even having them?
What do you mean?
Because when I think of something being made more accessible, that means it's there, but it's not out for everybody to access it. It's like you got to go looking for it. You got to go searching for it. So do you believe that topics like this, talking about the reality and actually enduring trials and tribulations, do you think they should be made more accessible? Or do you think many people should even just introduce these conversations? I feel like a lot of people aren't having these conversations to begin with.
I think that there is definitely, I think made more accessible for sure. I think that there's not a lot of people who are having these conversations, like you said, but I think that the conversations are out there, which is why I stumbled across that, however long, I think it was like 6 seconds, 8 seconds, or whatever the case may be, of like what suffering is in context. And it did something to me. Like, I don't know, it struck my curiosity and led me down a whole rabbit hole of like, okay, if this is this in the world, and this is what we know suffering to be in the world, then what does the Bible have to say about it? And I think that a lot of times I find myself doing Bible study solo, right? Because we don't have Bible study anymore. But in my personal time, when I am studying the Bible, it's really just all about me pulling these worldly contexts or phrases and seeing what does God have to say about this, or what's his perspective on this. And I think that has been a game changer for me, and it's really shifted my perspective to the way that we experience like life, or the way that we navigate life. But I definitely think that the conversations are out there. It's definitely a tribe of people who I feel very much connected to when it comes to like being a believer, being a Christian who isn't religious, and so much like just real discipleship. I think that's what's missing, I guess, if I had to sum it up.
Do you have any, I guess, advice to people that could be very interested in conversations like this, but don't know where to look or where to find information, I guess, like this?
Yes, I think it's in the Bible.
But I knew he was gonna say that.
Yeah. I would never lead someone, especially like a babe in Christ, I would never leave them to someone else or to like a podcast or like, I don't know, someone's social media I don't think that everyone's information is opinionated.
It is, most of it.
I don't think so personally. For the people that I would think about referring to someone who will be a little bit more spiritually mature. But I just think that you have to be careful and wary in what doors you decide to open. So the way that a babe in Christ and someone who's mature in Christ will internalize information and what they would do with the information and the doors that it will unlock will be completely different. So I would always point somebody back to the Bible. And I would say,
You said the doors and stuff that it would unlock.
Like in their mind, like the gears. Like, for example, I seen that clip and it unlocked, okay, let me go see what the guy has to say about this. Somebody else will probably go on TikTok and type in watch a bunch of video. Like, it's just different.
So you're saying that the doors that they will unlock will be completely different. And I'm asking, different from the Bible?
No, different from each other.
Okay.
Like a babe in Christ and someone who's spiritually mature, the doors that will be unlocked. We can consume the same type of content, but the perspective, the perspective and what you do with it after the fact, it will be completely different. And I think that's the part where I'm seeing there should be some type of like reservations around the type of content that's being consumed when you're so hungry and desperate to like learn or increase your wisdom in a certain area, you know?
Okay. Well, I think this was a great topic.
Yeah, I definitely would love to have a guest on in the future to dive more into deeper. This topic.
I feel like we say that with every topic, though. Every time we have a conversation, it's just like, we need a third opinion.
Yeah, definitely. We'll love a third opinion for this one. I think that it's so much more to dive into. It's so much more to, I don't know, unpack. And I think that if everyone could make this topic their own personalized like response, ask themselves these questions like, how do I suffer? What emotions do I typically feel when I'm suffering? Or what does enduring look like to me? Because there's a certain posture that's associated with suffering and enduring something well. And does that align with what the word says or how the word says that I should be carrying myself or the way that the word, because the word is the standard. So if I'm operating here, is my posture at the standard or is there some things that I could tweak? Like, how is my attitude? Is it nasty? How is my feedback? Like little things like that. So I think that is where the greatest room for like self-improvement lies when you look at the standard and look at where you are today. So I definitely, I don't know, y'all might hear this episode again for sure.
What's your advice for a sister? Do you have any advice?
My advice for a sister, I don't know, you go first.
My advice for a sister today would be, the first thing that popped in my head was allow yourself to feel. Every time I give advice to a sister, I feel like it's advice for me. But allow yourself to feel whatever it is that you're enduring, whatever season you're in, whatever it is that you're going through, the good and the bad. Meaning, I feel like we so much focus so much on what's next and what's to come and what's the future providing, whereas though we don't spend much time on the now. And like I said, that goes good or bad. So give yourself gratitude, give yourself grace as well. Be happy for how far you've come and stop focusing on, how far you have to go. I'm not saying don't worry about that at all, but don't make that your main thought or your main worry. Just allow yourself to feel, though. Allow yourself to feel where you are. Allow yourself to be in these seasons. You would never experience this day again. You would never experience this age again. You would never experience life as it is today again, honestly. So, yeah, just allow yourself to feel every moment with everything.
I think my word of advice would be to get in your Bible. And I think that if I had one goal that I would have to like highlight above all my goals for 2024, it would be reading my Bible and not just digesting the word from someone else's perspective, and not just going to church and just relying on whatever sermon or verses they decide to highlight for the whole sermon and turn into a motivational speech. But really just open your Bible and consecrate yourself and seek the Lord, because I'm telling you, the perspective is so much more different than it is of what you've been taught and what you've been told. So that'll be my word of advice for a sister.
Well, to wrap up another episode, go shop on www.dearsisterletstalk.com and use our special code for y'all, DSPOD, at checkout.
And don't forget, if you're listening to this on any of your favorable... And don't forget, if you're listening to this on any of your favorite Audible platforms, don't forget to download this episode, save. And if you're on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
Yes, toodles.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning into our podcast, Let's Talk Sis, with Des and Sa.
Stay connected by following us on all of your favorite social media platforms. And don't forget, use hashtag DearSisterLet'sTalk to find us.
Wait, before you go, head over to our website or our Instagram and join our interactive community for a daily dose of sisterhood, where like-minded women fellowship, encourage, and create a safe space amongst one another.
See you inside, sis.
Toodles.
Bye.